All right. Let's start with the closest. Here this morning, the Security Council heard a briefing from our head of the Department of Peace Operations, and that would be Under Secretary General Jean-Pierre Lacroix. He briefed the Council during its annual open debate on UN peacekeeping. He told Council members that UN peacekeeping remains a cornerstone of multilateralism in action, but he added, oops. All right. He told Council members that UN peacekeeping remains a cornerstone of multilateralism in action, adding that peacekeeping faces formidable challenges and can only ever be as strong as collective support of UN membership. Mr. Lacroix said the Summit of the Future will be a moment to re-appraise and reaffirm the inherent strengths that have made peacekeeping successful over 80 decades. Peacekeeping has proven itself as a key tool for this council. He said it must be continued to adapt to meet future challenges. The onus on all of us is to ensure that we are ready. His full remarks were shared with you. Turning to the situation in Gaza, today, as you may have heard, would have marked the start of a new school year in Gaza. However, after 11 months of hostilities, more than 600,000 young people are being deprived of access to formal education for another year. The UN Relief and Works Agency says no official schooling is available in any of its 200 schools, with many of them being used as shelters for displaced Palestinians. The agency says its teams are still providing recreational activities and psychosocial support in some of its schools. Children in Gaza continue to suffer the worst effect of the humanitarian crisis there, including the risk of disease outbreak. We, along with our partners, are continuing our efforts to protect children against the polio virus, with the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reporting that partners concluded the second phase of the vaccination campaign yesterday in southern Gaza. Meanwhile, more than 256,000 children under 10 in Khan Yunis and Rafah were reached over a period of 4 days during the second phase of the vaccination campaign. The initial round of the campaign is now almost 70% complete, with more than 446,000 children vaccinated out of 640,000 targeted during this first round. The second round of vaccination is expected to start in about 4 weeks. The last phase of this first round is set to begin tomorrow in northern Gaza. However, new evacuation orders issued for parts of the north include areas where local pauses had been agreed for polio vaccination. About 5,000 displaced people sheltering in 7 collective centers, mostly buildings that had been used as schools, are among those affected by this order. That's according to the initial assessment by our humanitarian partners. OCHA warns that repeated vaccination orders are deepening the humanitarian crisis for hundreds of thousands of people in Gaza. As of today, more than 55 evacuation orders remain in effect, covering up to 86% of the Gaza Strip. These directives, coupled with active hostilities, attacks on aid convoy, and the destruction of key roads, the presence of unexploded ordnance, and a lack of public order and safety, are impeding aid operations in Gaza. Access delays and denials have also continued to significantly constrain humanitarian access. OCHA reports that the number of humanitarian missions and movements within Gaza that were denied access by Israeli authorities nearly doubled in August as compared to July, with 105 missions and movements denied last month versus 53 the previous month. And speaking of a new school year, today is the International Day to Protect Education from Attack. In a message, the Secretary General says recent years have seen a dramatic increase in attacks on students, teachers, educational personnel, and schools around the world, from Gaza to Sudan to Myanmar to Ukraine to Colombia to the Democratic Republic of the Congo and many other places. Mr. Guterres urges all countries to stand with efforts to ensure that children and young people continue their learning during crises and after the fighting stops. The full message is available online. The Special Representative of the Secretary General for Sexual Violence in Conflict, Pramila Patten expressed her deep concern about recently published reports by the United Nations, including our own Human Rights Office, describing a dramatic deterioration in condition of detention for Palestinian men, women, and children in Israeli custody since 7th of October attacks and the escalation of hostilities in Gaza. These are very disturbing reports. There are very disturbing reports of sexual violence and other inhumane and degrading treatment that could amount to sexualized torture perpetrated against Palestinian men and women, she said. And her statement is available. Moving to Sudan, our humanitarian colleagues warned that heavy rains and floodings have impacted about 500,000 people since late June. That's just in South Darfur alone. In South Darfur, Red Sea, River Nile, and northern states, with North Darfur State being the hardest hit. We and our partners are on the ground aiding those who need assistance. Last week, 8 organizations delivered life-saving therapeutic food to 6,000 children suffering from severe acute malnutrition in the city of Nyala, which is in South Darfur. In the northern state, partners distributed relief items to tens of thousands of people. The severe flooding is worsening an already dire humanitarian situation in Sudan. In areas of risk of famine, including Al-Fashir, which is the capital of North Darfur, about 124,000 people have been impacted by heavy rains, according to the information we've received. Flooding and stagnant water are also heightening the risk of disease spreading. Nearly 2,900 suspected cases of cholera have been reported since the latest outbreak in mid-August. We and our partners continue the efforts to respond to the recent outbreaks. Just this morning, UNICEF reported that more than 400,000 cholera vaccine doses have arrived in Sudan and will be distributed. Just south to South Sudan, our peacekeeping colleagues there report that the mission provided support to the deployment of a general court-martial in Mideast in western Equatorial Province to promote justice and accountability for crimes committed by the members of the South Sudanese People's Defense Forces. The court ruled in 12 cases, including cases of rape and murder. 8 soldiers were convicted, dismissed from the military, and sentenced to prison, while the remaining soldiers were acquitted. The judicial process is regarded as a significant step towards enhancing discipline within the military and building trust with civilian population. The mission in South Sudan plans to extend support to these judicial proceedings to other locations to help strengthen the rule of law in South Sudan. And in neighboring Chad, our humanitarian colleagues say the flooding continues to get worse across the country. According to authorities, at least 340 people have been killed. Nearly 1.5 million people are now impacted by the floods. That's 90,000 people more than last week. More than 160,000 homes in Chad have also been destroyed. As we mentioned, the floods are also impacting agriculture, as nearly 3.4 million people are facing acute hunger in the current lean season. Chadian authorities, UN agencies, and our partners are providing food and nutrition supplies, among other urgent aid. We and our partners are also building shelters and providing tents, tarpaulins, and blankets. Meanwhile, health partners continue to support affected provinces, including with vaccination campaigns and the monitoring of waterborne diseases. As the situation evolves rapidly, our acting emergency relief coordinator, Joyce Masuya, has increased the allocation of the Central Emergency Fund to support the flood response from $5 million to $8 million. And staying in, moving to Southern Africa and Lesotho, the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says the food security situation in the country is deteriorating following a historic drought caused by El Nino. On average, agricultural production in Lesotho has declined by 33%, reaching the lowest level since 2018 and 2019. According to latest figures, nearly a third of the population, that's 700,000 men, women, and children, are facing food insecurity in the coming months. Joyce Masuya from OCHA has allocated $2 million from the Central Emergency Relief Fund towards the drought. Assistant Secretary General and Climate Crisis Coordinator Rina Gilani recently visited Lesotho to assess the drought's impact and call for more international support. Our teams there are also scaling operations to support the government in its efforts to deal with this crisis. And a quick note on Haiti. William O'Neill, the designated expert on human rights in Haiti, begins a 12-day visit to the country. This will be his first visit to Haiti this year. In Port-au-Prince, he's scheduled to meet with the president of the Presidential Council, Edgar Leblanc-Fils, Prime Minister Gary Coney, and others. He's also scheduled to travel outside of the capital. You'll recall Mr. O'Neill was designated by Volker Turk, our High Commissioner for Human Rights, in April of last year, following a request by the Human Rights Council. More information online. Excuse me. Tomorrow we will have a guest, and that is Corinne Fleischer, the Regional Director for the Middle East, North Africa, Eastern Europe for the World Food Programme. She will brief you on her visit to Ukraine. 2 more member states paid up in full. To all of you amateur paleontologists, the first country has a dinosaur named after it. That dinosaur lived 110 million years ago and had 500 teeth. It's a country in Africa. Niger. And what was the name of the dinosaur? The Nigerosaurus. You learn something every day here. Exactly. The second country has more pyramids than Egypt and was once the largest country in Africa. It is now the 3rd largest country in Africa. Sudan. Yes. So we thank our friends in Niamey and Khartoum for having paid up in full. Beat that Nigerosaurus. Benno.
Yes, I deserve it, right?
You deserve it. Yeah. You
yes,
just,
and don't be confused. I'm neither Maggie nor Michelle. I'm Benno.
No, you're not Edie either. Yeah, exactly. All right.
You talked about polio, and I just want to ask, would it be a fair description to say that you're on track to meet the 90% plus goal?
I think it would be a fair assessment. Obviously, we will have to reserve judgment on the campaign as a whole, really after this first round and then in 4 weeks. But I think the fact that our colleagues from UNRWA, from UNICEF, from WHO, supported by our security colleagues and others, have managed this is a testament to their determination.
And maybe just as a follow-up, why can this campaign work out so well, but the rest of humanitarian work doesn't?
Well, I think that's a question to ask those people who are doing the fighting. I mean, we worked with all the parties in this conflict to do this. So far, so good. But I mean, as I stand here reading out the data, I think it fails to portray the actual challenges on the ground every day for every vaccination to be successful. Senor.
Steph, I have 2 questions. First, on Gaza. The European Union Foreign Minister Borrell is touring the region, but today Israel said he's refusing to meet with him. Any comment on that?
I mean, it's not for us to comment, I think, but I would just say as a matter of principle, I think the more dialogue there is between all of the parties who hopefully are trying to work towards the same goal, the better.
Second, on Venezuela. Last Saturday, opposition leader Edmundo González quitted the country and requested political asylum in Spain, which was granted. Do you think that this represents the end of the crisis, and does it change the way the UN is dealing with it?
Well, it's clearly not the end of the crisis. I mean, we remain very concerned about the situation in Venezuela following the presidential election of the 28th of July. We once again reiterate our call for the full protection and respect of human rights, and the Secretary General continues to urge all the parties to solve electoral disputes by peaceful means.
Are you, the UN, somehow mediating or helping to mediate in the crisis?
I mean, we are always, as a matter of principle, always available to help mediate should all parties involved wish to have our assistance. At this point, I'm not aware we're directly involved. Abdelhamid, then Joe, then Deji.
Thank you, Stéphane. Pramila Patten issued a very strong statement today about the sexual violations of Palestinian detainees.
I
Have
just
you-
read it out. I just read it out.
Okay.
3 minutes
so
ago.
Does the SG stand behind that?
Of course.
Okay.
I
And
mean,
why it
to remind you that her title is,
Yeah.
she represents the Secretary
Why
General.
it came that late? I mean, she mentioned incidents happen in July and June, and why she was so silent all these months?
I think
all of a
I think the
sudden-
statement should be judged on its content, not on its chronology.
Okay, another question. A Burmese genocide scholar, Dr. Mong Zarni, returned from Israel and Palestine, where he witnessed firsthand the harrowing situation unfolding in Gaza. Hear what he said. I'm quoting him. "This is beyond what the Nazis embodied. I have never seen such sadistic violence."
What
Do
is
you
the
s-
question?
Do you agree with that
I
character?
think we have been very clear on calling out and condemning the violence against civilians. On the issue of genocide, you know what our answer is. Joe and then Deji.
Yes, does the Secretary General support Israel's withdrawal from the Philadelphia corridor as part of a ceasefire deal? And if so, what thoughts does he have regarding Israel's concern that without its presence, there's no assurance that tunnels between Egypt and Gaza will not continue to be used to smuggle lethal weapons to Hamas? Does he have any thoughts about an alternative to ensure security for Israel from such smuggling of
I think-
weapons other than Israel's presence?
I think, Joe, the situation with the ceasefire talks is complicated enough, is complex enough, is fraught enough with danger of not being successful that I don't think it would be wise for us to opine and give our opinion on one part of what could be agreed to. We just hope that the parties involved, that Hamas, that the Israelis find the political courage and the political will to reach an agreement for a ceasefire that will allow for the massive influx of humanitarian aid, unfettered, for the release of all the hostages, and for a possible way forward to return and rebuilding the situation both literally and figuratively.
Can you at least comment on whether the UN gives any, or the Secretary General gives any credence to Israel's security concerns about continued smuggling of weapons
I'm not going to.
between Egypt and
I'm not going
Gaza?
to add to anything I've just said. Deji.
Yes, I waited a little bit long, just like the deal, the ceasefire deal. Hopefully, it will be.
You didn't wait
reached
that
soon.
long.
Okay, my question. Two questions. First, it's been reported that Israel attacked Syrian territory targets last Sunday. Does the Secretary General have anything to say? I know this happened many times, but it's given the situation now. Is this a action that will get the situation worse?
We're very much aware of the reported airstrikes in different locations in Hama and also what the government of Syria is reporting in terms of casualties and injuries, including in first responders. I think for the Secretary General, he continues to be worried and more worried about the prospect of further escalation of violence in what is already a very volatile region, and that's an understatement to say the least. He calls again for caution that any miscalculation could lead to more violence, to a broader conflict. Important that everyone exercise utmost restraint, and also that everyone needs to respect, all the parties need to respect their obligations under international law, including international humanitarian law, as applicable, and to avoid any civilian casualties.
Is there any impact or has this attack affected UN humanitarian operations in Syria?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Sorry, the second question? Yeah, I know that. Okay, the third
Who's
question.
who's counting, Deji?
Oh, I'm bad at mathematics. Sorry. Okay,
We're all bad at math. That's
on
why
Sunday,
we're here.
Israeli Foreign Minister Katz, when accepting interviews, threatened to break and dissolve the Palestinian Authority if they want to take action on the ICJ's decision of the the West Bank. According to the report, it says they submitted a draft resolution to ask Israel withdraw from West Bank in 6 months. We just asked the president. He said he didn't really receive any letters like that. So first, is there any draft resolution like that?
Well,
And
we've
second,
seen
what's
the press
position?
reports, and I'm sorry the President of the General Assembly couldn't answer the question. I don't have an answer to that. I think you need to ask the Palestinian Authority representative here what they've submitted, if they've submitted anything. For the Secretary General, we've said it over and over again, the International Court of Justice is one of the major organs. We fully respect their opinions and their rulings. We encourage member states to do so. Volodymyr.
Thank you, Stéphane. It was reported that Iran had supplied ballistic missiles to Russia for shelling Ukraine. A European Union spokesperson said that EU allies have provided intelligence that confirms this information. Do you have any comment on this?
I mean, we've seen the press reporting on it. We obviously have no way of verifying it. But what we have seen is a massive increase in drone attacks and missile attacks in Ukraine, notably against civilian targets, which are extremely concerning to us. Madame. Oui.
Thank you, Stéphane. The Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati had requested a Security Council session on
Your
Lebanon.
microphone a little closer, please, to you.
You hear me?
Yeah, but we...
Can I repeat?
Yes,
Do I
please.
have to- Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati had requested a Security Council session on Lebanon, particularly on the targeting of civilians through the Lebanese mission to the UN. Any comment on that? Did you receive any information?
Yes,
on
I
that?
think a letter has been received. That will be up to the Security Council to act.
Insurance card.
Iftikhar, I think your lunch is ready and your microphone is open. So if you could take one and close the other. Thank you. My understanding is that a letter has been received. It will be up to the Security Council to take action. Senor.
Yes, Jamil Shadi from Brazil. My question is about Venezuela still. We've seen the siege of an embassy over the weekend. As our colleague said, Gonzalez had to flee. How realistic is that a dialogue can actually happen as you propose or suggest?
Well, I mean, first of all, on the issue of the embassy, I think the Argentinian embassy in Caracas, I think it needs to be the principle of inviolability of diplomatic and consular premises needs to be restated. This principle has to be respected at all times, in all cases, everywhere around the world, according to international law, according to treaties that are signed by member states. We would want the governments to deal with these issues within full respect of the law. Whether a dialogue can still be possible, we have to keep believing that the differences between the parties in Venezuela can be resolved for the benefit of all Venezuelans. Linda, then Stefano, then Ibtisam.
Thank you, Steph. Regarding the U.S. Proposed draft resolution for a peacekeeping operation to replace the current Kenyan-led police mission in Haiti, I know the SG doesn't have a role in in creating it. We know that. But I was just wondering, given the long history of UN involvement in peacekeeping operations in Haiti over the years, and given the current situation in terms of funding and other shortcomings, is this something that you sort of intuitively think he would support?
Well, I think, the Secretary General a few months ago laid out his preferences with the multinational support security force being one of them. I think what we really should all focus on now, what member states need to focus on, is why is this force still underfunded, right? Member states need to step up and fund the force that already exists. And I think if you look back, and you don't have to look that far back, it is critical for any peacekeeping mission to have the full support of local authorities, right? Of governments wanting to support, to have that peacekeeping mission. We've seen, it's an open secret. We've seen it in Mali, right? So I think there are a lot of things that need to happen, but we have a force already on the ground. It's currently underfunded. It doesn't need, it needs, if you look relatively, it doesn't need that much money in terms of the money that's floating around the world. And it should be fully funded. Stefano, then Ibtisam.
Thank you, Stéphane. Will the Secretary General watch the debate tomorrow night between Trump and Harris?
I don't know. He's not a big TV watcher, but I'm sure he has many people on his staff who will report back to him the minutia of what was said.
And what does he think is the most important issue of international affairs that the two candidates should make sure they will discuss tomorrow?
I'll tell you what the most important issue is, that I do not comment on the U.S. presidential campaign. Ibtisam.
Di Carlo is in, Miss Rosemary Di Carlo, she's in Libya.
She is in Libya. Would you like an update of what she's doing?
Exactly, yes.
Excellent. It's funny you should ask. I have that answer for you. In Tripoli yesterday, Mr. Carlo met with the president of the Presidential Council, Mohamed Memfi, along with his two deputies, Vice Presidents Abdallah Al-Lafi and Musa Al-Khoni, as well as the Prime Minister of the Government of National Unity, Abdelhamid Dbeibeh. And she also met with the Acting Minister of Foreign Affairs, Taher Baour. In her meetings, Mr. Carlo stressed the need for an inclusive process facilitated by the UN political mission in Libya, so as to overcome the political and security divisions through dialogue and through consensus. And she's today in Benghazi, where she held meeting with the 5+5 Joint Military Committee, and separately with representatives of civil society, youth groups, women's groups, during which she emphasized the importance of a free and open civic space and national reconciliation in Libya. Okay, enjoy your lunch, especially you, Iftikhar.